They aimed chains at her throat. I aimed myself between them. Every weapon turned my way. Thanks for tuning in. Before we dive into today's story, consider subscribing. It's the best way to make sure you never miss the next adventure. The auction hall smelled of fear disguised as profit. It was always the same: iron bars, harsh light, bidders with thin smiles and thicker purses. Yet tonight, the air carried something sharper, something alive. Behind the reinforced glass stood a vulpine girl unlike any I had seen, red fur bristling against a collar, ears pinned back, tail low but twitching with fury she couldn't smother. Her eyes were fire in the cold, amber bright, warning every soul in the room that she would not break. "She's one of the last unbonded vulpines," the auctioneer purred. "A rare genetic prize. Obedience conditioning included, though not perfected." The bidders laughed at that. They always did. A little disobedience made them believe they were buying wildness. None of them understood they were buying shackles. I stood in the back, wearing the same mercenary leathers as half the crowd, credits burning in my pocket that weren't mine but belonged to a client who wanted an asset. But when her gaze caught mine, steady, unflinching despite the collar, I knew I wasn't leaving this place the way I'd entered. She didn't beg. She didn't plead. She told me, with that ember gaze, that no human could love a foxgirl. That wasn't despair. It was fact to her, carved into her bones by the cruelty of this hall. I remember thinking, then I'll have to prove her wrong. The auctioneer's gavel slammed against steel. Lot 42. Starting bid, 10,000 credits. A murmur rippled across the chamber, predatory and eager. The bidders leaned forward in their seats, the glow of their data pads illuminating eyes sharpened by greed. I had been to hundreds of auctions like this, slaves paraded as bioforms, each one stripped of their name, each one reduced to a number. But I had never felt the weight of another's eyes the way I felt hers. Ember. That was what the tag around her neck read. A name disguised as inventory. A joke to the men in the room, but to me it landed like a flare. 11,000. 11,500. 12. The bids came fast, clipped voices raised over the drone of credits being exchanged. I clenched my fists. The money in my pocket wasn't for freedom, it was for delivery. My client had paid me to collect Ember, ferry her off-world, and hand her over. That was the contract. But contracts are paper against fire when a moment demands more. She was fire. 15. I said. My voice cut through the chatter like a blade. Heads turned. I'd spoken too quickly, too firmly. Already I was stepping off the path that meant safety. The auctioneer's smile widened. 15,000. Do I hear 16? 17. 18. The numbers climbed, absurd as the greed fueling them. I gritted my teeth. The credits I carried would only stretch so far. 20. The room hushed. All eyes found me. The number was too high too fast. Even the auctioneer hesitated. And in that hush, Ember tilted her head. Just a fraction. Ears forward. Her gaze didn't soften, it burned hotter. A challenge. No human could love a foxgirl. That's what she believed. That's what the world had taught her. But maybe, just maybe, she saw in me the one fool reckless enough to try. The gavel struck again. Sold. 20,000. To the man in the back. I exhaled, shoulders sagging. Too much. Far too much. But the credits were gone now, burned like kindling. No turning back. They led Ember out, chains clinking against the floor, the collar humming faintly with its power core. Her ears were flat, her tail tight against her legs, every step controlled resistance. When she reached me, the guard shoved her forward. Paperwork will be in your ledger. She's your problem now. Her eyes met mine. Close, I saw the flecks of gold in the embers, saw the scars under the fur along her jawline, saw the defiance etched into her very posture. Don't think this makes you different, she said, voice low enough only I could hear. You paid for a foxgirl. That means you own a foxgirl. I shook my head. I paid for a chance. What I do with it, that's mine. Her ears flicked back. Suspicion. Confusion. Maybe the faintest thread of something else. But it was buried fast beneath the armor of mistrust. We left the hall together. I didn't look back. Dockside 12's air was sharp with ozone and oil, the hum of ships and loading cranes rattling through my bones. Ember padded silently beside me, chains still clinking against her wrists. She walked with the grace of someone used to being watched, measured, judged, and refused to bow. "Where are you taking me?" she asked. "Anywhere but here." "That's not an answer. It's the best one I have." She snorted. "Humans always think vague words are hope." I glanced at her. The rain slicked her fur into a darker red, streaking along her muzzle, dripping from pointed ears. Even chained, even collared, she looked like she belonged to the wild, not this rusting city. We reached the landing bay where my freighter waited, a battered thing with patched plating and more character than reliability. Ember stopped at the base of the ramp, chains taut. "Say it now," she demanded. "Why me? You had no reason to bid." I hesitated. Truth and lies weighed equal in my throat. "Because you looked at me like I wasn't just another leash." Her tail twitched. The chains rattled. And for the first time since I saw her, her fire dimmed, not extinguished, just shifted, uncertain. "Then you're either lying," she said, "or you're even more foolish than I thought." "Probably both," I admitted. "But either way, you're free of them. That counts for something." Her silence said she didn't believe me. Not yet. But she followed me onto the ship. The freighter's hatch clanged shut behind us, sealing out the rain and the voices of dockside. My ship was no palace. Half the panels exposed wiring, the bulkheads rattled with every gust through the vents, but it was mine. And now, hers too, whether she wanted it or not. I led Ember into the central compartment. She paused on the threshold, eyes flicking over every corner as though cataloging escape routes. Her tail swished once, sharp and wary. "You live here?" she asked. "Home sweet home," I said, tossing my jacket onto a chair. Her nose twitched, ears pivoting. "It smells like grease, dust, and loneliness." I chuckled despite myself. "Accurate." She didn't smile. She remained standing, chains dangling from her wrists. The collar at her throat hummed faintly in the silence. I fetched a tool kit and crouched in front of her. "Hold still." Her claws flexed. "Why?" "Because I don't like the sound of those chains." Her ears pinned back, but she extended her hands. I worked the lock with steady fingers, the tension palpable. One twist, one click, the manacles fell away. Ember rubbed her wrists, fur bristling where the metal had pressed too long. "You didn't have to," she said. "I did." Her eyes narrowed, ember glow sharp in the dim cabin light. "Kindness is usually just another kind of leash. You think freeing me buys my trust?" "No," I said, meeting her gaze. "It buys you a choice." Her tail lashed once, then stilled. She didn't answer. I turned to the collar next, prying open the access plate with a screwdriver. Sparks bit my knuckles. Ember stiffened but didn't flinch. "This will take longer," I muttered. "It's wired to a failsafe." Her voice dropped low. "If you trip it, it'll fry me." "I know." "Then why risk it?" "Because I'm tired of watching collars decide who lives and who doesn't." She stared at me, searching for a lie. She didn't find one. Before I could make more progress, the freighter's console chirped. Incoming signal. I strode to the cockpit, Ember trailing silently behind. On the screen, a corporate seal glared back. Gold and black, edges like razors. "Unregistered vessel," the voice intoned. "Dockside records show you purchased contraband bioform lot 42. Compliance scan required. Prepare for boarding." Ember's claws scraped the doorframe. "They're already hunting me." "Not just you," I said grimly. "Us." Her tail lashed, her eyes narrowing. "I told you, no human can love a fox girl." Not when this is what it costs. I powered up the engines. The freighter shuddered, rising on thrusters. The docking clamps resisted, screaming metal against metal before snapping loose. Outside, alarms blared. Searchlights flared across the bay. Ember braced herself, for rising was static. I glanced at her, then at the comm screen still flashing with demands. You're wrong, I said, hands tight on the controls. Love isn't measured by what it costs. It's measured by what you refuse to give up. The freighter roared free, blasting out into the storm of stars. Ember's eyes caught the reflection of the jump horizon, wide with something between fear and wonder. And in that moment, she didn't argue. The freighter screamed through the orbital lanes, engines burning hotter than they were ever meant to. Warning lights flashed across my console like an angry constellation: coolant pressure, reactor heat, hull stress. Behind us, 3 corporate interceptors snapped into pursuit, their silhouettes cutting sharp against the scatter of stars. Ember clung to the co-pilot's seat, claws digging into the worn leather. Her ears flattened with each shudder of the ship. They'll catch us. Your vessel isn't built for speed. Neither am I. I gritted out, yanking the yoke. The freighter rolled hard, slamming us against our seats as a burst of laser fire seared the void where we'd been. But I'm stubborn. She barked a sharp, humorless laugh. That gets humans killed. That's one way to live. I shot back. Here's another. Hold that lever, now. Her head whipped toward me. What? Do it. She obeyed. Her claws wrapped around the auxiliary throttle and pulled. The engine shrieked, then surged with raw, agonizing power. The freighter lunged forward, closing the distance to a debris field ahead, shattered satellites and broken hulls tumbling in slow orbit. The interceptors followed, weapons firing. Ember hissed at each flash of near-death, but her grip on the throttle never wavered. Through there? She demanded. They won't risk it, I said. We will. I threaded us into the wreckage. Metal husks loomed on all sides, spinning chunks of steel and glass scraping past the hull. Ember's ears twitched frantically, her instincts reading the dance of chaos as well as my sensors did. Left! She shouted. I jerked the yoke. A slab of plating the size of a house tumbled across our path, close enough that the freighter's hull screamed as it brushed past. The interceptors hesitated, then peeled off, unwilling to gamble their sleek ships in the wreckage. We dove deeper, weaving through the graveyard until their signatures vanished from the radar. Only then did I ease the throttle. The freighter drifted into a shadow of twisted beams, hidden from scanners. My hands shook against the controls. Ember exhaled slowly, her tail uncoiling from where it had wrapped tight around her leg. For the first time, she looked less like a prisoner and more like a survivor. You trusted me, I said, nodding at the throttle still in her grip. Her ears flicked. I didn't have a choice. You always have a choice. She released the lever, claws clicking against metal. Her eyes narrowed. I had a mate once. He thought the same. Believed we could run, escape the leash. The hunters caught us before dawn. He died proving he was wrong. I swallowed hard. The fire in her eyes dimmed, not extinguished but buried under ash. I'm not him, I said quietly. And you're not alone anymore. She stared at me for a long moment. Then, slowly, her tail brushed against my boot. A flicker of contact, accidental or intentional, I couldn't tell. Before I could ask, the console pinged. Long-range scans showed a capital vessel entering orbit. Corporate reinforcements. Our window was shrinking fast. We need to get off this grid, I said. There's a jump gate 2 sectors out. If we make it. Ember cut me off, her ears sharp with urgency. No. They'll expect you to run for the gate. There's an outpost on the moon below. Abandoned, but I know the way. We hide, we wait. They'll search elsewhere. I glanced at her. How do you know that? Her jaw tightened. Because I was raised there. Before they took me. Silence filled the cabin, heavy with everything unsaid. All right, I said finally. Show me the course. Her eyes widened slightly, surprised that I trusted her word. Then she leaned forward, claws tracing the star map, plotting a vector I never would have considered. As I keyed the coordinates, I caught the faintest quiver in her voice. "If we make it, maybe I'll start believing you." The freighter descended through the moon's thin veil of atmosphere, hull glowing as dust storms swirled below. Ember leaned close to the viewport, ears forward, tail stiff as a spear. Her voice was taut. "There. The ridges. Follow the canyon cut. It will hide us from scans." I guided the ship down, the yoke vibrating in my hands as crosswinds battered the hull. The canyon swallowed us in shadow, jagged cliffs rising like the teeth of a predator. Ember's breath hitched when the first structures appeared, skeletal towers, broken domes, and the fractured shells of habitation blocks. The outpost looked dead, abandoned for decades, but to her it was something else. "This was home?" I asked softly. She didn't answer at first. Her claws gripped the armrest, fur bristling as memories etched themselves into her eyes. "Before the colors. Before the markets. My pack was raised here. We thought the humans had come as allies." Her ears flattened. "We were wrong." I landed the freighter beside a collapsed hangar. Dust billowed, settling like ash across the hull. When the engines cooled, silence wrapped around us, thick, oppressive, broken only by the faint sigh of the canyon winds. We disembarked together. Ember moved ahead, her steps sure despite the ruin. Her tail swayed low, brushing debris, stirring old ghosts. I followed, feeling like an intruder in her past. Inside the hangar, rusted ships lay gutted, their frames hollow and skeletal. Ember touched one with a claw tip, tracing the faded emblem painted along its hull, a stylized flame. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Our crest. Ember fire. It was meant to mean life." I studied her. "And now?" Her eyes burned. "Now it's just another thing they tried to own." We camped that night in what had once been a command chamber. I lit a small heat unit, she curled near it, tail wrapped tight around herself. For hours she said nothing. I gave her the silence, working on my tools, checking the ship's systems. Finally she spoke. "You asked why I don't believe humans can love a foxgirl. Do you want the answer?" I set the wrench aside. "Yes." Her ears tilted back. Her claws picked at the floor. "Because every time one of your kind has touched us, it was to chain, to brand, to sell." The word love became a mockery, a collar polished to look like a gift. "You think I'm fire?" To them, I was fuel. Her tail quivered, and for a heartbeat I thought she would curl tighter, retreat back into herself. But then her eyes met mine across the dim glow, fierce and raw. "So when you say you're different, when you dare to call me people, it feels like another lie. And yet..." I leaned forward. "Yet?" She looked away, ears flattening. "Yet you cut my chains. You bled your credits. You didn't flinch when I told you the truth." I felt the words before I spoke them. Then maybe that's the start of something they never wanted us to find. Her tail brushed the ground between us, inching closer. Not touching. Just near. The silence stretched, softer this time, filled with unspoken possibilities. Then the calm on my wrist chirped. A faint ping, nearly lost in the canyon static. My blood froze. Someone was scanning. Ember's ears snapped up, her entire body tensing. "They're here." I shut down the heat unit, plunging us into near dark. My heart hammered. "How many?" She inhaled, nostrils flaring. 3 ships. Hunters. I know their scent." I checked my pistol, then looked at her. Her eyes glowed faintly in the shadows, wild and unbreakable. "They won't stop," she whispered. "Neither will we," I answered. Her tail curled around my boot this time, tight, deliberate. "Then prove it." The canyon trembled with the thrum of engines. From the shadows of the collapsed hangar, Ember and I watched streaks of light rake the cliffs, search beams carving through dust storms. 3 hunter craft prowled above, their wings spread like carrion birds. "They'll sweep the whole canyon," Ember muttered, ears flat. They know we're here. I keep my wrist calm, static biting my ear. Kest. You out there? For a long moment, nothing. Then a familiar voice crackled back. Holt. You're alive? Barely. I've got to ship 2 ridges over. If you want up, move fast. Relief washed through me. Too fast, too easy. Ember's tail lashed once, her eyes sharp. You trust him? He's saved my hide before. And sold it too? She countered. Before I could answer, Kest's voice returned, smooth as oil. Bring the asset. They're paying triple now. We can split it, walk away rich. The words hit like a knife. My gut clenched. Ember stiffened, teeth bared in a silent snarl. I killed the calm. He's not with us. Her gaze seared mine. He's with them. You knew this could happen. Yeah, I admitted, throat tight. But I thought maybe. Humans. She spat, tail bristling. Always thinking you can gamble with lives. The sound of boots cut her words short. Outside, hunters dropped from the crafts, visors glowing pale, rifles drawn. They fanned out with the confidence of predators who believed the kill was already theirs. I drew my pistol. Ember crouched low, claws splayed, every line of her body coiled fury. For one breath, the ruin felt alive again, not a graveyard, but a battlefield. They'll take you first, I whispered. They'll chain me second. You know what happens after that. Her eyes glimmered in the dark, hard and bright. Then we fight. The first hunter stepped into the hangar mouth. Ember moved before I could blink. She was red fire in motion, tail a streak, claws raking across his rifle before he could lift it. Metal screeched, sparks sprayed. He went down with a cry muffled by his helmet. The second raised his gun. I fired, the bolt slamming him back into the wall. More poured in. Shouts. Muzzle flashes. The chamber filled with chaos. Ember leapt, twisted, struck with feral precision. Her collar sparked under the strain of movement, but she didn't falter. Then a stun round cracked across the room and caught me full in the chest. My body convulsed, pistol tumbling from my grip. I collapsed, muscles refusing to obey. Ember whirled, her eyes widening. Rian! 2 hunters seized the chance, rushing her with restraints. She tore one's arm open with her claws, but the other slammed her into the wall, a shock baton crackling across her ribs. She screamed, fur flaring as if lit from within. I fought to move, to rise, but my body betrayed me. Through blurred vision, I saw her glance at me, her fire flickering not with anger, but with something else. Choice. With a snarl that shook the ruins, she wrenched free, drove her claws through the baton's core, and hurled the hunter aside. She could have bolted, could have vanished into the canyon, left me stunned and helpless. But she didn't. She came back for me. Her arms hooked under mine, lifting me with impossible strength. Shots rang past us, sparks showering. Her breath was ragged in my ear, words torn from her throat. You don't get to die, human. Not yet. She dragged me through a shattered corridor, down into the bowels of the outpost. My muscles twitched uselessly, but my heart thundered at the truth. She had chosen me, against every scar, against every betrayal. Behind us, the hunters roared, their boots hammering the floor. Ahead, the tunnel opened into the dark of the old reactor chamber. Ember pulled me inside, slammed the hatch shut, and pressed her body against it to hold it closed. Her eyes burned into mine. Now you prove it! That we're not just fuel for their chains. Prove it, Rian. The door shuddered under pounding fists. The storm of pursuit had closed around us. The reactor chamber was a tomb of broken steel. Massive coolant pipes hung like ribs from the ceiling, leaking vapor into the air. At the center squatted the dead reactor core, its shielding blackened and scarred from some ancient overload. Ember pressed me into the shadows while she braced against the hatch, every muscle taut. The hunters hammered on the other side. Metal screeched under their weight. One of them barked orders through a voice filter. Override in 60 seconds. Prepare to breach. I forced my limbs to obey, shaking off the stun's aftershocks. My pistol lay somewhere back in the hangar. All I had now were the tools at my belt and the grit in my teeth. Ember's eyes flicked to me, ears sharp. Move, human. You're still half dead. Not dead enough, I muttered. I staggered to the reactor console, wiped dust from the panel, and found the faint glow of emergency power still alive. Old tech, older than either of us, but maybe angry enough to wake. What are you doing? Ember demanded. Turning the chamber into a weapon. The console hummed, its screen cracked but readable. I rerouted what little power remained into the magnetic field coils. The floor vibrated faintly, like the heartbeat of a giant stirring from sleep. The hatch screeched, the override nearly complete. Ember's tail lashed, claws carving grooves into the metal as she braced for the rush. Her voice shook with fury. You'll kill us both. Not if it buys us time. I shot back. The hatch blew inward. 3 hunters stormed through, visors glowing, rifles raised. Ember leapt like wildfire, claws raking across the first man's chest plate, sending him crashing into the reactor wall. The second opened fire, bolts searing past me, slamming sparks from the pipes. I slammed my palm on the console. The reactor answered with a scream of magnetic force. The hunter's rifle wrenched from his hands, ripped sideways into the core with bone-cracking speed. The man followed, armor sparking as he slammed against the humming field. Ember's eyes widened at the sudden storm of magnetics. She twisted midair, tail balancing, claws striking the third man across his visor. His helmet shattered. He collapsed in a spray of sparks and blood. Breathing hard, Ember landed beside me. Her fur bristled with static, every strand standing on end from the field. You're insane, she growled. Good thing, I said, teeth bared. Because they're not done yet. The chamber shook, deeper this time, a vibration that belonged to something far larger than boots or rifles. Ember's ears snapped up, her entire body going rigid. Through the broken roof, a shadow moved across the canyon above, blotting out the light. She whispered the word like a curse. Leviathan. I didn't need the scanners to confirm it. The hunter craft we'd faced before were nothing compared to this, an armored behemoth, its hull bristling with harpoons and cannons, designed to drag entire ships screaming from the sky. Its spotlight cut through the reactor ruins, a burning sun that found us instantly. A voice boomed from its speakers, cold and mechanical. Unauthorized bioform. Final warning. Surrender or be erased. Ember's tail lashed once, fierce and defiant. She turned to me, her eyes glowing hotter than the reactor's coils. This is it, Rian. They'll kill us both to prove a point. You can still leave me. Say I force you, that you tried to comply. I cut her off with a shake of my head. Not a chance. Her breath caught. She looked at me, really looked, as if searching for cracks in the armor of my words. Finding none, she whispered, Then we fight together. The Leviathan's harpoons primed, cables twitching like the tongues of hungry predators. The reactor chamber trembled under the weight of the storm descending upon us. I grinned despite the fire in my chest. Let's prove them wrong. The Leviathan's harpoons fired in unison, 4 steel lances screaming down through the shattered roof. They punched into the reactor chamber with thunderous impact, cables tightening, the whole ruin groaning as if the moon itself were being dragged apart. Move! I shouted. Ember was already in motion, a streak of red fire weaving between the anchoring lines. She slashed with her claws, sparks showering as she scored the armored steel, but the cables held, humming with energy fields designed to withstand ship thrusters. The Leviathan's engines roared overhead, dragging the entire reactor chamber toward collapse. Dust rained from the ceiling, chunks of steel tumbling. I sprinted to the nearest harpoon, pulling a plasma cutter from my belt. The beam flared bright, biting into the metal. The cable hissed, resisted. Then snapped with a shriek, recoiling upward like a severed serpent. Ember's eyes flashed. One down! The Leviathan responded instantly. Panels on its underside split open, revealing gun ports. Streams of fire tore into the ruins, blasting stone and steel into molten shards. Ember darted between falling rubble, her body flowing with impossible grace. I ducked behind the reactor, heat searing my face as a blast cratered the floor where I'd been. "Rian!" Ember called. Her tail whipped, pointing toward another harpoon. I followed her lead, sprinting through the chaos. She leapt onto the cable itself, claws digging in, racing upward like a flame climbing a fuse. Halfway up, she slashed deep, the metal fibers screeching under her strength. I reached the base and set the cutter. Together, her from above, me from below, we severed it. The cable snapped, whipping through the chamber. Ember was thrown clear, tumbling through dust and fire. I dove, caught her mid-fall, and we crashed together into the rubble. Her breath hitched against my chest. "You don't stop," she whispered. "Neither do you," I gasped, helping her to her feet. 2 harpoons still held. The Leviathan dragged harder, pulling the chamber's roof apart, exposing us fully to its cannons. The spotlight pinned us like prey. "They'll vaporize us," Ember snarled, ears flat. "Unless—" Her eyes darted to the reactor core. "No," I said instantly. "It's unstable. You light it, this canyon won't exist. They'll kill us anyway." She seized my arm, claws biting, eyes burning with desperate fury. "You wanted to prove you're different? Then trust me." The chambers shook violently. Stone cracked, metal screamed. The Leviathan descended lower, its armored jaws opening, revealing the glowing heart of its main cannon charging for the killing shot. I looked at her. At the fire in her eyes, at the scars on her throat, at the tail coiled behind her like a whip ready to strike. And I realized, this wasn't about escape anymore. It was about defiance. I nodded. "Do it." Ember sprang to the console, her claws dancing across ancient keys, her voice a growl of determination. I ran to the 3rd harpoon, plasma cutter biting deep, sparks searing my hands. The cable snapped free. The Leviathan roared in response, cannon flaring brighter. "Now, Ember!" I shouted. With a howl that split the night, she slammed her claw down on the ignition. The reactor wailed like a dying star, its coils surging to life. A magnetic storm erupted, ripping the final harpoon free and hurling it upward. The Leviathan's systems faltered, its cables writhing as the field tore at its hull. "Get down!" Ember screamed. She threw herself against me, knocking us behind a collapsed bulkhead as the reactor core overloaded. The explosion was cataclysmic. A shockwave of magnetic force ripped through the canyon, tearing stone from cliff, shredding metal like paper. The Leviathan convulsed in the sky, its harpoons snapping loose, its cannons misfiring into its own armor. With a final groan, the behemoth lurched sideways, crashed into the cliffs, and vanished in a blossom of fire. Silence followed, broken only by the crackle of dying flames and the hiss of settling dust. Ember lifted her head from my chest. Her fur was scorched at the edges, her breath ragged, but her eyes, those ember-bright eyes, blazed with triumph. "They thought we'd break," she whispered. I cupped her cheek, smudged with ash. "They were wrong." Her tail curled around my wrist, deliberate, unyielding. "Maybe," she said softly. "So was I." The canyon smoldered, lit only by the dying flames of the Leviathan's wreck. Its carcass lay broken against the cliffs, half buried in rubble. Smoke drifted upward into the thin sky, staining the stars. The hunters were gone. Dead or scattered. Ember stood beside me at the lip of the ruins, her red fur streaked with soot and blood, her tail still curled protectively around my wrist. She was silent, staring into the night as though afraid the fire would vanish and prove none of it had been real. "They'll send more," she said finally, voice raw. "Maybe," I admitted. "But not tonight. Tonight they lost." Her ears flicked. "You risked everything for me." "Why?" "Because they told me no human could love a fox girl," I said, the word sharp, unflinching. "And I couldn't stand the thought of letting them be right." For a heartbeat, the canyon held its breath. Ember's eyes softened, the fire within them no less fierce. but no longer aimed at me. She stepped closer, her muzzle brushing my shoulder, her tail wrapping fully around my arm. "You're a fool," she whispered. "But you're my fool." I laughed, the sound breaking through the ash and silence. My hand found the back of her neck, fingers weaving into the scorched fur where the collar had been. She didn't flinch. She leaned into it, eyes closing, exhaling a breath that sounded like release. We left the ruins together. The freighter still stood waiting, scarred but intact. Its hull bore the marks of fire and shrapnel, yet it would carry us beyond this moon, beyond the reach of those who thought chains could cage fire. When the engines lit and the canyon fell away beneath us, Ember pressed her forehead against mine. Her voice was low, almost reverent. "They said love was a leash. But with you, it feels like freedom." I smiled, my hand on hers. "That's because it is." The stars opened before us, endless and waiting. Ember's tail coiled tighter, not as a chain, but as a choice. And together we dove into the dark, not fugitives, not prey, but proof. Proof that even in a galaxy built on chains, some fires can never be owned. And that love, human, vulpine, or otherwise, was the fiercest fire of all. Reaching this point means you're a true fan of these tales. Comment below with your state or country. I'd love to see where our community is listening from.